entire career in electrical distribution, I have turned to Electrical Contractor Magazine to learn more and understand the contractors that I work with. And every other year, they produce a great set of stories based on their survey called Profile of the Electrical Contractor. It gives a lot of great depth and insight into the contractor, where they've been, and some hints onto where they may be going to help us, serve them better. So in this episode, I am lucky to have Andrea Klee and Julie Mazur, both from EC Magazine, here to share some of the latest from this year's survey, 2024. It's going to be a nice introduction to the results of the survey. And of course, their magazine, their website, and all their resources will be able to give you more information. This is just a taste. Andrea Klee is publisher at Electrical Contractor Media Group. Before coming to electrical construction industry, she worked at magazines about weather and the beverage industry. She said, guess which one has the best trade shows? And Andrea maintains her active lifestyle thanks to her Nespresso machine and is a recovering Pacific Northwesterner. She currently resides in Washington, D.C. Julie is the managing editor of Electrical Contractor, Safety Leader, and Line Contractor magazines. Before coming to Electrical Contractor, she was an editor at Knight Ridder Tribune newspapers and the Los Angeles Times. She's also taught English as a foreign language in Egypt and Japan. She has a mass communications BA from the University of California, Berkeley. Go Bears! And is permanently retired from ziplining. Julie is an enthusiastic sports spectator and radio listener. She likes to read, ride her new bike, and cook. Welcome to Keeping the Lights On. I'm your host, Todd Reed, and on this podcast, I connect with the owners and pros who design, build, and maintain our electrical, communications, and industrial world to explore the best ways forward. Let's get into the show. So we like to start out each episode with the meals that bring us together. So Andrea and Julie, if I were to visit you, where might you take me to eat, and why would you choose this place?
I'll answer that one. I would say that we would go to Albi, which is this Palestinian restaurant that has recently won the James Beard Award. The chef makes delicious Mediterranean meals, and they're super yummy. And then I also recommend Ambar, which is a Balkan restaurant that's here in DC. And there's like this salad that's a very simple salad with peppers and onions and tomatoes and cheese, and it's like so perfect. So that's really tasty. And I recently went to Mexico City and had a delicious dinner at Puyol, which is one of the best restaurants in the world, supposedly. And they have some creative uses of ants and grasshoppers that you can enjoy. You have to kind of trust the chef in that case. But It was really good.
Wow. Yeah, I'd have to take your word for that one. That's crazy. So those are some. That sounds like some amazing places there. So, Julie, what do you?
Well,
what do you
I
have?
don't live downtown where you'd probably come to our office to visit us. But if you wanted to get on the metro and come up to where I live, we really like the restaurant Via Maya. It's in our neighborhood. It's Mexican, and the food is fantastic. But also the people, and also the people who own it are super community oriented. So every school fundraiser, they give stuff and they support all the sports teams, and so it just is an added extra bonus.
Yeah, I love those at local places when you often will see photos of all the teams they support. So you got all these soccer team, basketball team. But yeah, it's kind of fun. So
you can't go there if you don't want to see anybody you know. You have to be prepared.
It's just not a secret place. So no private meetings there. I always like to have some really cool, smooth transition to the topic from restaurants. So I think what we would be talking about at any of these restaurants, maybe not Julie's because everyone would know her there and we would never get the conversation done. So maybe we'll go to the one in Mexico where no one would know us, and talk about the kind of the state of the electrical contractor, or the profile, as you all call it, profile of the electrical contractor. And it's been a great thing, as I said in the intro, that I've been reading for almost all my whole time in this career, that in marketing in the distribution space. So let's start out, and whoever wants to answer this, with a little bit of history, kind of what's the story behind the survey.
So first off, Julie and I have not been here since the start of the profile of the electrical contractor, but we have been here since, I've been here since 2004, and Julie was just before that, a few years. So the survey has been out in the field more than 6 years. One day we'll go back through the old archives and try and find the first edition. But we send it out to our audience. So for many years, it was sent out to our print subscribers. And then we added in our newsletter subscribers. And so we put together this very comprehensive survey, send it out, and start collecting the responses. So it has been able to track the industry over time. So since our subscriber base is virtually the entire industry, about 90% of the dollar volume in the electrical construction industry, we are able to see, what types of work they're doing, how old they are, how big their firms are, and when those things change throughout time. So I came across one from the 80s where it said that the industry was getting younger, and but I don't think that has been a trend that has been in place for many decades at this point. So
interesting. I wonder if we'll start seeing that, though, as we have a big chunk moving on for retirement.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In 2022, and was the first time we did the survey only online.
Oh, okay.
And so this year it was only online as well. We send it to our print subscribers, but they only answer through online on the computer.
Okay.
I don't think you can do it on a phone.
Yeah, we used to send out a paper copy to our audience.
Do you think that's affected your some of the outcomes, possibly, being on the computer?
I don't think so, because I think we used to weight it based on how many responses we would get back from each type, and so they would pretty much follow the trends. So, but I think making it easier for people to take has been helpful.
So high level, I'm curious, what are some of the trends that kind of stood out to you from this year's survey?
Well, the average revenue from new construction is up since the last survey, which our researcher thinks is a sign of economic growth, which is good for everybody. And maintenance, service and maintenance and repair declined a little bit, which is weird because that's a really good source of revenue, but that was what they found.
Interesting.
Well, one of the things that's interesting, or what we track over time, is the size of firm too. And this survey found far fewer smaller firms, and the firms are getting larger. And so the smaller firms might also be more responsible for the maintenance, service, and repair. So that could also account for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's start with the kind of work that they did in 2023 and any trends you saw there. I mean, besides the increase in new work and down in maintenance.
Well, we have, in the survey came out with more than half of the electrical contractors get their revenue from CII, which is commercial, industrial, institutional. And that's the bigger firms doing that work. And then the smaller firms are more focused on residential, which all makes perfect sense. And also the larger firms also make money from non-building, which is like transportation and what else?
Some of the utility work,
Wastewater.
some of the, wastewater, some of those areas. There was, a noticeable spike in electric vehicle charging equipment installations, which isn't surprising with all that money coming into that area. Also, power quality went up pretty significantly, which was kind of a surprising finding for us. But I guess, with anything, you need to have clean, uninterruptible power. which is not a great word for a podcast, but it's like
But a very important.
an important one. Yes, exactly.
I was going to say about the individual project types.
Yes.
That she said that the researcher found increased were, so Andrea said EV charging equipment, smart grid technology, home automation and connectivity, and prefab. Those were the 4 types.
Yes. And some of these have grown from a very small level. So they haven't reached like a mainstream status, but they are showing like a significant increase.
Right. And those all make sense to me. Yeah, that's it. I'm excited to see prefab up. That's always kind of something I've always been interested in. On the EV installing, was it just large, or was it a mix of small and large doing that? I mean, did you see anything in there? I was curious.
It's definitely a mix because there's small there's sort of 1 to 9 size contractors or the next level up that are doing, multifamily apartment buildings. They're doing chargers there.
Or even single family.
Or single family. I mean, they're not doing gas stations necessarily.
You should see some of the creative solutions people in my city block have come to for installing their EV charging equipment, like going up through the tree and like coming back down on the other side of the sidewalk to, because they park on a city street, and so they have to like be able to charge their car, but they don't have a parking space. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be something I think cities will have to
address in the future.
Come to a better solution for. So be aware, electricians. There's a space for you there.
There is.
Well, with that shift in like kind of projects they're working on, let's talk a little bit now about the kind of the products and services, maybe where you've seen a shift in demand that they're wanting.
Well, for the profile, so it's we get about 100 pages of data to start with, and then later on in the year, these other reports trickle out. So we'll get more information about the specific types of products that people are investing in. But in this initial batch, we know that how people buy things and what informs their purchasing. So one of the main things is availability and price and ease of installation. Those are the top 3 attributes that come up consistently in the profile. And then beyond that, there's things like how compatible it is with the existing systems, whether it's made in America, which usually comes up, especially if they're working in government projects. So we get a lot about that at this point, and then you'll have to come back to us later in the year for exactly what they bought. But based on previous surveys, technological products, obviously tools is something that they are always buying. I think, thermal imaging comes and goes. Software, depending on how you ask the question, sometimes goes up.
I don't remember seeing this. Do you ask about services that they look for to help them do their business better?
We talk about collaborating with engineers, like some of the bigger firms collaborate with engineers because they're using more technological things and they need, I think it's came out with like 60% of the firms have a relationship with an engineer or an engineer on staff. But that's definitely in the larger firms.
Yeah, over the last couple decades, also how they get specs has been less complete. So when they get to the electrical contractor, or if they're involved in a design build or like some sort of collaborative building situation, they're more influential in what products that are being installed and selected because, they may have experience with something that hadn't worked on a previous project. So they can kind of get in there and break the spec, or if it's an or equal, they can choose what works for them. But, and so one thing that influence with the engineers and the involvement with engineering is more important now because they're getting less information up front when they're putting their projects together.
Yeah, you definitely hear that in contractor meetings, if you're sitting in on them, that's becoming more of a thing. So then they have to hire people or bring people out of the field to do some of that kind of spec work, which, is a burden, which we'll touch on a little bit later. I think I remember my question I wanted to ask. So how many stories come out in the magazine about the survey? So it's not all in one issue. You come out with a couple different, how's that work?
We have the main one this in July, which is the sort of demographic snapshot of what work electrical contractors did in 2023. Excuse me. And then in this August, we have the second part, which is more about the products and design work and that kind of responsibility.
Okay.
And then, those who are interested can go to our website and find the full report probably after the August piece comes out. And they can download it and read it themselves. And, definitely recommend a cup of coffee or 6 as you're digging through it. But it will definitely be available for people who are really interested and want to get in deep into the data. And
So
then
all
those
100
other, sorry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool that you open that up, because people can look at that and they'll be looking very specific things or whatever. And that's pretty cool that you do that. So look for that. I assume you show how to access that on your website and in
Yes.
the magazine in August or whatever. So that's cool. And if you're listening to this, I don't know, so far in the future, we're talking in 2024. So maybe you can see if they did if it's 2026 or 8, maybe they've done another one already. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned, so let's move from the products to then how they install it. You mentioned prefab. Do you have any other kind of questions or, trends that you saw on how they do their work, like prefab?
No.
We know a lot about the sources of revenues. What has changed over time is where they get the bulk of their revenue. So they used to get most of their revenue from traditional power and distribution. And in 2016, that fell off dramatically. And things like lighting and other building systems came up and met traditional power. So, and then at some point, lighting surpassed the power and distribution as the top source of revenue.
I believe it was 2016.
Yes.
Probably transitioning to LED and all that, I assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the work that the traditional electrical contractor has been doing has changed over time. One thing we know is that there's been a growing and consistent labor shortage in the industry. And so prefab has become a more significant part of the work that our contractors are doing. So, there's been some interest in like the courses that they're taking and the types of work they've done in that area. So, and that is something we probably expect to grow over time.
Well, the larger firms are the ones who are able to do more prefab because they have larger space, they have more employees, and they can use they're not using the time of a very highly skilled electrician who could be on the job supervising. They can have people back at their plant or their headquarters with more, a lot of people putting stuff together. Then they can just bring it to the job site all ready to go and be installed.
And I definitely think there is also an interest in, people they collaborate with, manufacturers and distributors that can help them get items to the job site in more complete packages.
Hey, I just thought of this. I should have asked this at the beginning, but can you how do you define small, medium, large, or your sizes of contractors?
1 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to
19,
20 to 99, and 100 plus.
Okay, so you really break it down. That's
That was
cool.
a test.
yes.
You had to you had to dial a friend for help. That's good. It's good. Thank you, Julie, for that. Okay, that helps kind of
And one
understand
thing-
how you're looking at.
Sure. And then by keeping those sizes consistent, you can kind of see where those interest levels break down. And our researcher really loves the 5 to 9 employee firms because they tend to act like much bigger firms and can scale up and down based on how much work they have available. And they'll do some light commercial work and, are more nimble than maybe even some larger firms. But, you see in the 100+ employee firms, for instance, there's first of all, BIM has been up sharply from previous to about a third of our readers are using BIM when they're working on projects. But if you look at the 100+ employee firms, it's about 80% of them are using BIM in some of their projects.
Well, that's a perfect transition, and also a way they do their work, right, is through BIM. And how about any other questions about technology and their business? Anything about like the technology integration into the way they do their work, like BIM, for example. Do you see any other examples of that?
Software is technology, and tools are a little more complicated than they used to be when you had your hammer and your screwdriver and your pliers. So like if you have to use the thermal imaging tool or something, that might be, would you consider that technology? There is technology in everything that they do. You can use your phone to calculate things or
do commissioning once you're on the job. Mm-hmm.
You can do commissioning. There's a lot of apps that people can use, but people sometimes don't jump to use a new technology if they already know how to do something.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we see at Electrical Contractor Magazine is showing people what is out there, product-wise, technology-wise, so they can, even if they're not going to use it, they know it's there and it's something they can aspire to, if you will.
Yeah. And we know from both the profile and other surveys we've done that labor savings and productivity is one of their most important attributes that they're looking for in product purchase. So, something that will make them do the work more efficiently with fewer people. Again, going back to some of the labor issues they've had.
People are working longer, and, you have to be careful, ergonomically. If you're crimping something constantly, you want to find a tool that's really going to support you, that's going to make the work easier so you can continue to work. If you can't find someone to help you, if it's not you haven't decided to retire yet, you're still going and you want to do it safely and comfortably.
Yep. I was just looking at some of the courses that they were planning to take. So only like 3% of them said they were going to work with drones, but those are probably very enthusiastic 3%. Yeah. But, we do have about 16% that said they wanted to do electrical system design or BIM. So, we can kind of use what they're looking at to what they want to study as like an indicator of how interested in those new technologies they are.
That's a perfect transition to my next question. So thank you, Andrea, for that. So new technology, a well-trained workforce. So what did you learn? I know this is usually a big one. What did you learn about the topics that are most important to the contractor as they attempt to train their teams, both their field teams and their office teams?
Well, the top 3 training subjects that were mentioned were safety, personnel management and leadership, and use and changes in the National Electrical Code.
And so 2 of those are pretty consistent. They're always up there. Safety and the NEC are definitely up there.
But this was a big jump in sort of business skills and business management that has moved into the top 3 of training that people are looking for.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if that's do you think it's partially because of the transition from one generation to the next? Or?
Maybe.
It could be. Yeah. And there's definitely a big jump in interest in like developing new business opportunities as well. So they might be running into some roadblocks in certain areas, and need to look at what else is out there or how to grow a different like division of their business.
Todd, can I give you some numbers?
Yeah,
Which I thought was
please.
interesting.
Yep.
Business development, 22% of people said they wanted to take some kind of business development class. That was 5% in the last survey. Financial
geez.
management was 14%, and it had been 4%. And interest in courses in prefab was 12%, and it had only been 5% in the previous survey. So I thought those were interesting jumps. And you talk about using the profile of the electrical contractor survey. I use this to develop story ideas to see, if I hear they want to take this kind of training, we can find a subject matter expert to write about that in the magazine. And because our magazine, I think, is a training tool for electrical contractors.
Well, that's fascinating. Guess what I'm going to do for my next topic search, especially for 2025. So thank you for that idea, Julie. I'll send you the check in the mail.
Both the courses taken and will take, and also the types of work performed and what has changed since the last one. Both of those are the most forward-thinking or looking of the survey questions, I think.
Right.
Because it's just really seeing what they're most interested in.
We don't go back and ask them if they actually took those courses, though.
Well, but I think it shows a trend, right? Especially prefab. That just shows that they're needing to do more with it, and so they need to learn about it. And all three of those are very encouraging to me about where the contractors are going. And I've seen this. So what's cool about surveys like this is that I go to meetings and I talk to people, and you kind of like, gosh, I feel like I'm seeing a trend, but you never know, right? It could be just the people you're talking to or something. So I would say all three of those, I would kind of have said, yeah, I think this is happening more. Like I've been in meetings where they talk about business development, approaching it professionally and trying to do it in a very intentional way. The personnel management is great, right? Instead of just like, Andrea, do the work, you don't get it done. It's more like, well, how do we work together to get that work done and collaborate, as opposed to maybe the way it's been done.
And even putting more thought into, leadership and management.
Right.
Because sometimes people have moved up in a firm, or, even if it's like, say, 1 to 9 person firm, they moved up and they're doing well at their electrical work, but maybe they don't have training in how to manage people. And, it's not a lot of time to stop and learn, because you have to keep doing your job. But I think that people wanting to learn is a really good sign.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
And one thing I think, and I don't know, we can't really study our own influence, but since we do reach an audience of 80,000 plus electrical contractors, and we send them magazines every month, and we have a newsletter, and we have a website and all this other stuff. So if we use, this as a guideline for what we want to talk about, what they're interested in, we can kind of steer some of these conversations too. And one thing we've seen over time is, like, when both of us started, the contractors' involvement in low voltage systems was very low. It was like in the 30 or 40 percentile range. And now it's almost everyone is doing it. So it's 95% of them. So around the time we started, we had just started this new supplement called Security and Life Safety Systems. And because there had been some growth in this area, so we wanted to kind of provide materials for our audience to, like, show them what opportunities were available for them. And now we see, like, almost everybody is doing some aspect of that. So that's very cool. We still have a portion of that supplement inside the magazine every month called Integrated Systems Contractor. It's usually near the back, and it features, some of the fire life safety and technology and systems work and security, fiber optics, all of those pieces.
Well, it definitely shows that convergence that I've been hearing about from some leaders within my company that, that had talked about it for 25 years, and it finally is happening where, you got low voltage going into the breaker box and all that kind of stuff.
We have in in this part of the article, it says about 56% of all firms are doing have active engagement in system integration or data telecom centers.
Yeah, I've been having some guests on talking about microgrids and also data centers and things and AI and stuff. Yeah, there's some interesting things happening in this space because of our desire for that information.
We had an article a few years ago about like the DIY wireless home automation things people can put in, and how somebody who is not a professional buys something at a big box store and installs their, ring their doorbell or something, but then they realize they want more and they're not able to do it, and what a good source of revenue that is for electrical contractors, and for electrical contractors not to fear wireless and do it yourself, because every wireless product needs wires to be coming from somewhere to give you the electricity. So that's another thing that we talk about in our that I want to communicate in Electrical Contractor Magazine, is that don't fear the technological evolution, because you're still going to be needed. I mean, look at electric vehicle chargers.
Yeah. So I like to close it out by kind of refocusing on the why of what we do. What motivates you to do this day in and day out? What keeps you excited and passionate about what you do?
Well, I really think that, I like to think that I'm doing a public service by putting together this magazine. I want people to be able to pick this up as an extra tool in their toolkit that, tells them, that gives them National Electrical Code stories. It tells them about new products that are out there that they might not see, but I see because I go to trade shows and conferences and I'm learning stuff, and these people are busy doing electrical work, so they don't have time to stop and walk away. We have technical topics, we have safety, we talk about mental health in the construction industry, and I feel like I'm serving the public, or the electrical contracting public, by putting together this magazine.
In relation to that, yeah, I do feel like it's an important resource for the industry. It's an educational tool. And, we're trying to always keep our audience fresh as well. So we're always looking for, to bring new readers and subscribers. So we're pushing really hard right now to get more apprentices to sign up for the magazine, and younger people as well, so we can get more of that perspective as part of it. But I do feel like it does paint a picture of what's going on in the industry and provides new information. We will highlight any trend we hear of to focus on. And we also provide project profiles that show types of work that contractors are actively doing, so they can see, this is how somebody else, one of my peers, is doing it, so I can do it too. And the print magazine still has a very wide and well-read audience. You might hear, all sorts of things about print, but people still like to get a printed copy, and even Gen Z likes to get printed copies of things. So it's we always have to tell people, no, we're still here, we're still printing this, we're sending it to you because we think it's important. And people learn differently when they're reading something in front of them than when they're reading on a screen, and they're less distracted and they can really take time to absorb the information. So I think that's, why we're still doing what we do, even though we have all these digital versions of the magazine as well.
Okay. Well, great. Hey, Andrea and Julie, thank you both so much for being here. It's been great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Todd.
Well, that was my conversation with Andrea Klee, publisher at Electrical Contractor Media Group, and Julie Mazur, managing editor at Electrical Contractor. I would encourage you to pick up the next couple of issues, July and August of 2024 of Electrical Contractor Magazine, to get a lot more details of this extensive work they worked on over the past few months. You can also connect with Andrea and Julie and what they're working on by heading to the links in the show notes. I would love to hear what stood out to you about this conversation. You can email me at podcast@graybar.com. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast player and YouTube. Thanks for listening to this episode of Keeping the Lights On. We'll see you next time.